Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel.
All right. Well, here we are in the middle of the highlights of Zack Snyder's filmography. The
Oh, yeah.
Boss.
The blueprint, if you will.
Yes. And we've already gotten through Dawn of the Dead, 300, Watchmen, and Sucker Punch, and we have now arrived at Man of Steel.
Bangers, all of them.
Yeah. So, just a little backstory here about Man of Steel and how Zack got the job. Um, It was in 2008, Warner Brothers started taking pitches from comic book writers for a Superman reboot, and Superman Returns had released in 2006. Obviously, mixed reviews, mixed box office reception. Warner Brothers decides, okay, well, we need to reboot. Obviously, this was a month before the Dark Knight release, so they were feeling pretty confident for what they'd seen so far before that was released to the general public, to the general public, excuse me. So some of the comic book writers they were looking at: Grant Morrison, Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, Brad Meltzer. They were even looking at Mark Millar teaming with the director Matthew Vaughn for something. They looked at Mick G, something that he wanted to do. A few other directors that before they even got to the next level of directors, Christopher Nolan, who was
Yo.
busy coming up with the idea for The Dark Knight Rises with David Goyer. Goyer pitched him an idea for Superman. And
Mm-hmm.
he liked the idea so much that while Dark Knight Rises was in production, he goes to Warner Brothers and pitches this idea. So he's not going to direct it because he's busy working on The Dark Knight Rises to end out the Dark Knight trilogy. But then after that, then they start looking for a director for his version of the Superman reboot. And some of those names were Robert Zemeckis, Darren Aronofsky, Duncan Jones, Jonathan Liebsman, Matt Reeves, there's a name, Tony Scott, and also Ben Affleck.
The Batman himself,
Yeah,
man.
Ben Affleck. But Warner Brothers and Christopher Nolan, might I add, they both came up with Zack Snyder. They decided on Zack
Yeah.
Snyder eventually. It was in 2010. So we could always keep that in our back pocket that if anyone ever has any doubts, say what you want about the movies, but Christopher Nolan chose Zack Snyder to direct the
And
movie.
I already love Christopher Nolan, but one of my favorite things is that Christopher Nolan picked Zack Snyder and he stood by Zack's side
Right.
that entire production. And anytime someone tried to get involved and get in the way, Christopher Nolan said, "Hey, leave him alone, let him make his movie."
Right.
And that's awesome.
Right. So the story was written by Christopher Nolan and David Goyer, and Zach ended up directing it, and Nolan stayed on as a producer, and
Hmm.
you could see that because Nolan's how should I say this? You could just tell when you're watching Man of Steel, it feels a little like a Christopher Nolan movie, like with the
Yeah, it had that great non-linear storytelling that
right,
had in the Dark Knight trilogy. So
right,
that was really cool.
yeah, absolutely. So Man of Steel eventually gets released June 14th of 2013.
Yes.
And here we go. Let's get right into it.
Let's get it.
So we're here on Krypton and we're seeing this amazing visual, this Star Wars. I don't know, just Krypton's never been depicted like this before. Just such stunning visuals. Yet another signature Zack Snyder opening.
Yup.
And it's, you know, we have Russell Crowe as Jor-El. He's trying to warn everybody that the planet's going to blow up. No one besides his wife believes him, and they're they made this decision to infuse the codex of the genetics of Krypton into his son Kal-El, the first naturally born Kryptonian in centuries, because they'd been doing it artificially
Mhm.
through this. this this pod system here that we
Yep.
uh, that we get to see, and it's a situation here where just a really emotional and Lara Lorvan. She says he'll be an outcast, a freak. They'll kill him. And Russell Crowe, how he'll be a god to them because science wise he already knows what happens to Kryptonian DNA on Earth. So drops the line, "Goodbye, my son. Our hopes and dreams travel with you." And Jor-El manages to send Kal-El, in that little spaceship towards Earth before end up getting killed by General Zod during an uprising. And there's just so much to unpack there with Zod and coming before the council, and he he wants the codex, but it's like codex is gone already. It's already in his son, and they're trying to find they're trying to shoot the ship down. Doesn't happen. Long story short, they get sentenced to the Phantom Zone.
The Phantom Zone. You
Yeah,
won't kill us, but you'll damn us to a black hole for all eternity.
yeah,
It's so good.
yeah. Michael Shannon just going for it, and he says, "I will find him. I will find him.
It's bro,
I
that
will
whole
find
sequence
him."
that whole sequence is so good
Yeah,
because he's yelling at the council and he's just like, Jor-El was right. You're a pack of fools, all of you. And
yeah,
he just all of a sudden his attention goes to Laura and he goes, and you think your son is safe? I will find him, Laura. And it's like, oh my God, like it's terrifying because this dude's about to go into the Phantom Zone, but he says it with such conviction that you believe him. You're like, wait a minute,
yeah.
wait a minute.
Um, one little detail that I noticed, and it's a little foreshadowing of what's to come, is when they crystallize them,
Hmm.
it seems like it's a painful process, and a lot of the people are yelling. He even grunts a little bit, but Feora, she doesn't yell out a single yelp or grunt or any. She grits her teeth as the crystallization overtakes her. A nice little choice by the actress
Yep,
Anjay.
she refused to give them that satisfaction, that
Right,
pain, that sound, and she just grit her teeth and she just
right.
took it.
And the guy the bodybuilder behind her is like screaming,
Mhm.
like all the guys that are getting exiled, so to speak. So I thought that was really cool. Um, so we all know the story. We didn't get to see it in the movie, but Kal-El lands in Kansas and on a farm. He's adopted by Jonathan and Martha Kent, played respectively by Kevin Costner and Diane Lane.
The beautiful, drop dead gorgeous Diane Lane.
Yeah,
Like,
they had to work to make her look older.
yeah, like they had to go out of their way to try to make her look older, and I was like,
Right.
"Guys, it still doesn't matter. She's drop dead
Yeah,
gorgeous."
yeah, it's great. And then well, we'll get to that in a second here, but we had the boat scene where uh, Clark is, he's not out yet as with his powers and such, but he's busy saving everybody, and um, we get back and forth flashbacks, of that scene, and then, while that's happening, we see in the school,
Mhm.
he can't control his powers. He's a little kid, locks himself in the closet. Diane Lane comes with just a soft voice just to ease him. It's really cool. We could drop that line. Let's see here.
Yeah, let's pull up that line. I immediately
Yeah,
thought about you when it came up.
yeah. So Clark's in there, and he says, "The world's too big, Mom."
And
And
Martha says, "Then make it small."
oh, so good.
And it's such a powerful line because right now we're experiencing what Clark is experiencing, which is very scary, right? Like he's reading everything at once, right? So you can only imagine how he feels, and he can't really control it. And she's just like, "Hey man, like pretend you're on an island, listen to my voice," and just helping him tune everything out. And it's a really soft scene, and it's pretty powerful. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's pretty powerful.
Absolutely.
I
So
also love before we could go on, I also
yeah,
love, because we did the flashback, that the very first act that we see from Clark on Earth is him being a hero. I love that that's the very first thing that we see. that he saves that oil rig that has just gone haywire in the middle of the
Yeah.
ocean. And our introduction to Clark on Earth is already him going above and beyond to save people. And I thought that was really cool because we could have built up to that, right? Like Zach probably, if he wanted to, could have like spent some time you getting to know Clark. And he goes, no, no, no. The very first thing you're going to witness Clark do is save the lives of others. And I thought that was really, really cool that he did that.
Yeah, definitely. So we get back to present day. Clark jumps out of the ocean, and we see that physique that Henry Cavill works so hard on, and all I remember is just pecs, man.
That's it, bro. Just pecs. I remember we watched this together. We were at the theaters, and I remember just like, my goodness, Henry Cavill is a beautiful man. I was like, that man worked very hard for that physique, and I'd like to call that the Superman physique
Right,
because he
and
nailed it.
he was already in shape before this movie, but he put on some muscle mass
Yes,
for the
he
role,
did.
so that was really cool. We get another flashback here from Clark's childhood. The bus, had a little accident and goes off the bridge, and he has to make a decision. Am I going to save everybody or potentially let my secret get out? But he does what he could. He saves everybody. He saves Pete, who was just bullying him like moments earlier.
He saves his bully, and it's
Yeah,
great because his bully's being a douchebag,
right.
like for no
Excuse me.
other reason at all, other than just to pick on Clark. And then you got this bus go off the bridge, and Clark, he sits there for a second, he saves everybody, and he realizes that the bully's not on the bus, and he goes back for him. And I was like, that's a Superman moment.
Yeah, it's great. And I enjoyed this one little section here, and we keep having callbacks to it, but we get we get a glimpse of young Lana Lang,
Hmm.
Pete, obviously Pete Ross, I believe his name is, and then Fordham, a callback to Whitney Fordham. It's all these people from Smallville, but also I'd like to think there was a nice little callback to the Smallville TV show.
That would have been, that's not, yeah, that'd have been cool. Yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
maybe not. They're from the Superman lore, but they were all heavily featured during the Smallville TV show. So, um, we got Jonathan Kent saying, "You have to keep the side of yourself a secret." What was I supposed to do? Just let them die? Maybe.
Bro, that line that line got so many people mad. I
Right.
remember. I remember, but like if and I understand that like it's easy for us to like cast out in someone when, it's not us, but it's like could you imagine though, you as a father, the fear of what would happen to your son if that secret got out? You might not have all the answers. You might say the wrong thing, and I thought it was very human for him to not be sure
Right.
that he was like, I don't maybe I don't, but
Right.
like,
Right.
it's
Right. He
doubt, and I
he
like
he
that.
he he didn't mean it, obviously, but
Yeah,
in his mind, it's just like, I don't know what to say right now.
yeah. He's like, because look, I'm gonna be real with you. I think that I think that he's right. Like, and
Mm,
we'll talk about this as we continue the theme
sure.
of the movie. But it's really what would the world do? What
Right.
would they do if they knew this type of person existed?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, just really early on, we get these Christianity references here. Did God do this to me? Religious references. So, um, Jonathan delivers the line here. You're the answer, son. You're the answer to are we alone in the universe? Clark, can I just keep pretending I'm your son? You are my son.
You are my son. And he
Yeah,
hugs him with the embrace, and boy, it hits the feels.
yeah, it's great. You are my son, and I have to believe that you were sent here for a reason. And even if it takes the rest of your life, you owe it to yourself to find out what that reason is. So great.
It's dude, the people who wrote on this film put in the work. Every
Yeah,
single writer involved, Goyer, Interior, it's just like, bro,
yeah.
they
And
went in.
a part of me, it feels like just Kevin Costner is just channeling that character from Field of Dreams. Just
Right? Right?
just
You
like,
can feel it.
just that emotional weight of that character being on the farm and everything. It's like, whatever you did for Field of Dreams, let's bring that back, but turn up to 10.
Yeah,
So,
let's do that.
and we don't find out yet find this out yet, but Jonathan Kent does die eventually. But
Mm-hmm.
we see a present day Clark just traveling the globe because he's trying to find himself now, hiding under various aliases. Um, in one scene, he's working at a bar, a tavern, and a young lady gets assaulted.
We gonna talk about this.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, and Clark stands up for her, and the guy, you know, it's like, what are you going to do about it? Tries to push him. Obviously, nothing's going to happen. Throws a beer can at him, dumps beer all over him. Clark doesn't fight back because he knows he could destroy him,
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't kick the guy out who deservingly, needed to get kicked out. But he goes outside. He trashes his truck, and he moves on. He leaves
Yeah.
because it's like, well,
Yep.
I can't have this traced back to me, so bye.
Yep. It's
Oh,
it's such a it's such a good scene because it's another illustration that one of Superman's greatest strengths is his restraint. Because like you said, he could have manhandled that dude even with just not even a fraction of his power. If he
right,
wanted to embarrass him, he could have, but
right,
he knew that that wasn't the right thing to do. But we did get a little bit of street justice when he trashed
right.
his truck. And I know that some people are like, why would he do that? Like, why would Superman do that? And I'm like, hey guys, let's not try to protect someone who commits sexual assault on someone else.
Right.
Okay. It's just a truck. All right. It's just a truck.
Right.
Let's
And
allow Clark to let off some frustration a little bit.
right. And this is we didn't see all the stuff growing up that he had to deal with,
Mm-mm.
like um for those of you that ever watched Smallville, you got to see that evolution of Clark using his powers when he shouldn't have used his powers because he
Mm-hmm.
was busy growing up, and learning when to use them and when not to use them. So he had a moment of anger, he took it on the guy's truck, and you know what? Better you take it on the truck than on the man.
Exactly, exactly. It's
So,
okay. It's a very human emotion, right? I mean, how many times have we gotten upset and maybe like hit the counter or something?
right,
You know what I mean? It's a human emotion, and obviously, he's very strong and he destroyed that truck. But at
right.
the end of the day, it's just a truck, man, and that guy deserved it. I don't care what anybody says.
There we go.
That guy deserved it.
All right, so we eventually meet Lois Lane, played by Amy Adams, and
Good God.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So she gets this assignment. They discover a big Kryptonian ship in the Canadian Arctic. Um, Obviously, Clark is drawn to this. He's disguised, and he learns about himself from the artificial intelligence, which is made to look exactly like his father, Jor-El.
Mm-hmm.
And he learns that who he is, where he comes from. He was sent to Earth, and Lois Lane, while following Clark, unfortunately, she gets into trouble with the security system. She gets injured, and if not for him stepping in, you know, uh, she would have hemorrhaged. She was hemorrhaging internally with the bleeding, and
Yep.
he uses his heat vision on her to cauterize the wound. So obviously, he's revealing his secret to her, which is something he hasn't really done to too many people. We don't know how many people he's done this to up until then.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a key moment because it was a moment of life or death. She was going to
Right,
bleed internally and die,
right,
and no matter what he does at that moment, he's going to expose himself, whether he's gonna use, super speed to get her where he needs to go or
correct.
whatnot, no matter what he does. So he did what he needed to do to save her life.
Yes, absolutely. And let me just say that was really risky because she's a reporter and they're not paid to keep their mouth shut. So
Nope.
so says a lot about her integrity as well. Um, so we actually get a scene of him getting his uniform with the S shield on it, and he gets to test his flying abilities. And what do we call it? The first flight scene.
First flight, baby.
Yeah, just the joy of a child just in his face. He's an adult man, but I just thought that was really cool. It's just like, hey, look, I'm flying. Everybody dreams of being able to fly, but I'm actually getting to do it.
I love that scene too because, like you said, you can see it in his face. I know there's people that say, "Oh, he never smiles in the film." This entire sequence of him flying, he's got the biggest smile on his face.
Yeah,
Like, first he attempts it and he falls, and he's like, "Oh," but then he gets it, and you see the smile, and you see him getting what's the word, better positioning for his flight and whatnot, and just having a great time. And it just, I don't know. Like we all want that, right? We would all love to be able to do that. And that first flight sequence is very important for him because it's the moment where like he realizes like he's never really like pushed himself yet, you know. And you have the narration from Jor-El's like, there's so much you can do. Like the boundaries are limitless. You just have to try. And he flies, and it is an awesome sequence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Lois is trying to convince Perry White, played by Lawrence Fishburne.
Love Lawrence Fishburne. Come
Yeah,
on.
he's great. So she's trying to convince him to write this article, and he's just like, aliens, Lois, really? Like, you know? Um, and so originally she is trying to write the story, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and reveal things. And so she tracks Clark down to Smallville, wanting to expose him, not knowing the ramifications of it. And she drops the story because Clark tells her how he lost his father. Jonathan Kent is so intent on Clark not revealing his secret that when the tornado came, he holds up his hand and he says no.
Yep.
And Clark has to stand there and watch his father die in the tornado. How do you feel about this choice? That it wasn't a heart attack. It's normally something like that. It was a choice that Jonathan Kent made.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but people say, oh well, he could have raced in there with super speed. He could have done something. He could have done something to make people not see. You know, who knows what he could have done. How do you feel about this? That this is the way it was done.
I'm glad you used the word choice because
Right.
this entire movie is built on the theme of choice, the choices we make and the consequences of those actions.
Right.
So I remember watching the scene and thinking this is very different from what we know from when his father has a heart attack. And it's kind of that play on no matter what, out of everything that Superman can do, super strength, flight, heat vision, with all those abilities, intellect, he couldn't protect his father from a heart attack. So I understood when people were like, oh, it's different. Like, why did they change it up? But when you watch the movie and you continue to watch the movie and where we're going with the story, and you realize that again, Jonathan had a point because he was so dedicated to the idea of protecting his son because he was convinced that the world wasn't ready. And again, the movie will touch on that numerous times throughout, where how would the world react to such a being?
Right.
And we have to keep in mind, like Jonathan has probably thought about this time and time again. What if they find out his secret? What are they going to do? Again, in this scene, Clark is a teenager during this scene. So just imagine, let's just say Clark goes through with this and saves his father. Word of mouth starts getting around, the government gets involved. How is Clark going to react to that? How is the family going to react to that? What happens if he turns himself unwillingly? And then we get, for those who know Flashpoint knows what happens to Superman when the government gets involved.
Right.
So I liked the choice. It was different, but I liked it because I understood what the movie was trying to say. No matter what, he was convinced the world wasn't ready. And Clark, as sad as it was, understood what his father was doing. So he had to stand there and he just had to take it. Again, we can come up with a bunch of anecdotes and like, oh, he could have run in, he could have done this, he could have
Right.
done that. But again, you're still taking a major risk in doing so.
Right.
And Jonathan was willing to give his life to protect his son. And I mean, come on. I can't be mad about that. I liked it.
Very sad scene. So Clark returns home, tells his mom that he found his parents. She reacts a certain way. She starts crying. It's like, why are you crying, mom? He's like, I'm just so sad that, they're all going to take you away from me, So we get the "You Are Not Alone" scene.
Oh,
And it's Zod taking over every television broadcast over the entire world, telling the world in their own language in each country, "You are not alone." He says it a few times before he starts his message. So surprise everybody, there's aliens and we're here to take over. Um,
That entire sequence is shot like a horror movie.
yeah,
Like, I remember Clark being outside, and you hear it, and you hear almost like a very weird static interference. I couldn't even try to recreate it if I wanted to, but it's not a traditional static. It's very eerie, and you kind of hear the door and the wind on the house, and he walks in, and the only thing that's illuminating the room is the television, and it's just you are not alone, and
right.
it's just on repetition, and you see it, and I'm like, man, this is a horror movie. This was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Long story short, unless Kal-El turns himself over, we will inflict our wrath upon Earth. So Clark goes to church. Here we again with the religious imagery. Um, we don't get more spot on than Jesus in the background.
Oh my god, they did it on purpose.
Yeah, you see
It's on
Jesus
purpose.
behind him, and for those of you that haven't picked up on it yet, Jesus is a Christ, or excuse me, Superman is a Christ figure,
Mhm.
for so many different reasons, and he's talking to the clergy. Zod can't be trusted, but I'm also not so sure that people of Earth can't be trusted either. And the clergyman tells him, "Well, sometimes you have to take a leap of faith first. The trust part comes later."
Oh, such a good line, dude.
Yeah, it's a great
Such
line.
a good line.
Um, we fast forward again. Clark turns himself over to the U.S. government, and oh, and by the way, leading up to this, it was really interesting because Perry he started being a little suspicious when Lois dropped the story,
Yeah.
but now it's full blown tilt. Like, all right, Lois, you're right. We believe you. They're talking CIA, they're talking FBI. You need to do, and it's a really big deal. They show up to her the apartment, guns drawn, the whole deal.
It
So
was really cool because, like you said in the beginning, he's like, "You're not printing the story. You're not
right,
putting this out there." And then she eventually just stops cold. She leaks it, but later she stops cold, and he goes, "What happened to your leads?" And she's just like, "Oh, it was all smoke." And he's like, "I don't think your leads got cold." He goes, "For whatever reason you're doing what you're doing, I think you're making the right choice." And then he brings it up again. He goes, "Because could you imagine how the world would react
right,
if they knew a being like this was here among them?" And all of a sudden, General Zod is just like, "Hey, by the way, guys, you're not alone." And it's like,
right,
"Oh, well,
right. This
cat's
is
out the bag now."
ongoing theme exactly,
Yep.
and so they have like a little one-on-one meeting where the government's watching through the two-sided mirror. What's the S stand for? Oh well, on my world it stands for hope. Well here it's an S.
Yeah.
And nice little nod. Maybe it can stand for super. And then she gets cut
And it
off.
just gets
Really,
cut off.
really cool. Um, so Zod and Superman meet face to face, and we start getting flashbacks. He starts explaining to Clark why he's doing what he's doing. He wants to continue the Kryptonian race, and you're the key to it. And Superman's just like, I don't know about this. You're talking about taking over the world, and we get a nightmare sequence. He's in the black suit, and it would not be the last time we see the black suit, but he's in the black
Nope.
suit, and you like this scene, like he's in these skulls and he's like falling down. No, you said to me it felt like it was like a horror sequence almost.
It's
Well, another,
it's another horror movie sequence where
yeah,
he's trying to get inside he's trying to get inside Clark's head, and he's telling him pretty much what's going to happen, and Clark is like, "Well, what happens to the people of Earth?" And he goes, and Zod is very honest. He goes, "The foundation has to be built on something." And you see the human skulls there, and you see Superman start to sink into the skulls as he's reaching out. No, he goes, "Zod, I can't let you do this. I can't let you do this. No, no." And it's a great horror. It's almost like a Man of Steel nightmare timeline, right? Like he's
right.
showing him what's going to happen, and Superman just like, "I can't let that happen no matter what."
So we start finding about the plans that they have. They want to start Zod and his team. They want to start terraforming the planet Earth to make it the new Krypton, obviously. And they, long story short, Clark and Lois are able to escape, so they could warn the U.S. of of Zod's plan, and we get the AI of Russell Crowe guiding Lois to get off the ship, and
It was so cool because I'm
yeah,
gonna agree with you. I didn't think we were gonna see Jor-El and Lois Lane interact in this movie. So you have, the AI which has the consciousness of Jor-El
right.
working with Miss Lane, and he's doing the whole and opening the door and guiding her there, and she's fighting Kryptonians and stuff with a gun and everything else and getting her out. That sequence is awesome. Again, didn't think I was gonna get a scene like that, so it was really cool to see that happen.
Yeah, it's great. Um, she gets in an escape pod, but it's falling to the earth at a really,
Yep.
rapid rate. So he's just like, you can save her. You can save them all. Just a
Mhm.
really cool line. And we see the Christ pose. Thank you. Thank you. We see the Christ pose. So it's like, so in case you haven't gotten it by now,
Yeah, yeah.
Superman is a Christ figure, just to let you
Yes.
guys know,
Yep.
So some people said to a fault. I'm just like, nah, bring it on. It's a theme. If we
It's
have a
yeah.
theme, we're gonna run with it.
They did in so many different Superman versions. They do that. They did it in Superman Returns.
Yep.
They do it in Man of Steel. They've done it numerous times. They're like, hey, can we get a shot of him with his arms? Can we do
Yeah.
that? They did it with Smallville poster. They were like, can we get a
Yeah.
shot with the arms? We want that Christ like look. Can we get that? They do it every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, they did it. They did it a couple times on Smallville, actually, to the point where,
Hmm.
he drops the line, "What am I, some type of messiah figure?" It's
Yep.
it's
Yep.
it's just an ongoing theme, and it's just the Superman lore. It's
Hmm.
just the Superman lore, and so we start getting this first confrontation here between Clark and Zod's troops. Um, Zod goes to threaten his mom, and for the first time, we see Superman throw a punch in this movie,
You
and
think you can threaten my mother,
yeah,
and he's just and again to think he's still not going 100%, but he's drilling
yeah,
it
he goes
to
at him.
General Zod at this point.
Yeah, and I looked at the subtitles. The subtitles said, "You think you can frighten my mother." So
Ooh,
there's a little tidbit. Yeah, yeah. I watched it with the subtitles. So
you think you can? Ooh, that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, because right before she told him to go to hell. So
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
wasn't like she was gonna like back down or anything. He's
Mm-mm.
destroying the house, the barn. So um, I will say this, and it's very hard to understand what he's saying in that moment because there's a lot of stuff going on. So
I really, really thought he said, "You think you can threaten my mother?"
yeah,
Because he's like, "Tell us where the codex
yeah, yeah,
is,"
yeah.
and it's such a good scene too, right? Because you have no idea where Superman is,
Right.
none, and he just comes flying in like a bullet. And I wondered what it was like for Feora and the rest of the crew to just kind of see like, what the did he
What was
just
that?
what
What
was
was
that?
that? Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
well, oh, I guess we better get over there. And then you have Superman, taking General Zod. And again, I remember a small complaint of people like, oh my God, look at all that destruction. And I'm like, guys, again, this is an inexperienced Superman whose mother was just threatened in front of him and he's going off. Let it be, but
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they eventually separate. Zod makes his way back to the ship. You know, Clark is trying to come up with some type of plan and such. They deploy the world engine, and it's terraforming and it's destroying Metropolis. You see bodies, just people flying through the air and such. Um, Clark destroys the terraforming platform, and the military is launching an attack so they could find a way to trigger the portal to send Zod and his troops back to the Phantom Zone. And earlier, we have a moment where Fayar is facing off with the Colonel. Was it a Maloney? Is that his name?
Oh, what is his let's find out right now.
Christopher Maloney. Yeah,
Okay.
as Colonel Hardy. And right before she thinks she's going to kill him, she said a good death is its own reward. He makes his way onto the ship, and he finds a way to sacrificing himself, crashing to trigger that Phantom Zone opening again. And he says it to her right before that happens. A good death is its own reward. He sacrificed himself, but he saved everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
it was really cool. Big explosion. The blast throws Lois out of the ship. she's fallen again, but ongoing theme. Clark is there to save her, and it was really cool. It's it's almost I took this note down. I feel like he finds strength in her a little bit,
Yeah, I can see that.
So the ship is destroyed, and you know, uh, we find out that Krypton's, we're not going to make Earth the new Krypton. Zod is just losing at this point. He vows to destroy Earth and everybody else out of revenge, and then we start a fight between
Oh,
Superman and Zod, and it was interesting because we had seen how many years it took for Clark to hone his powers, and Zod says, like, I've been training for something like this my whole life. Y- yeah, and he rips the armor off, and he's ready to go toe to toe with Clark.
I love it because he goes, I was bred to be a warrior, Cal.
Yeah,
Trained my entire life. Where did you train? On a farm? Like
yeah,
it's like he's so offended at
yeah,
the idea of this nobody thinking he can throw down with him. You know what I mean? He goes, "Are you kidding me? Do you know who I am? I was bred for violence." And then, like you said, takes everything off, hones his senses, and flies. And that's when I was like, "Oh man, it just got real."
yeah. So they're going back and forth. Metropolis is just getting destroyed left and right. Um, a lot of people had an issue with this, a lot of the collateral damage, and um, whether you want to make an excuse for Clark or not, it was his first day on the job as Superman,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, the person he was facing was the one with no regard.
Yeah.
There were a few choice moments um, where Clark was saving people, or he was telling people to be careful. Like when they were going through the town, it's like everybody go inside. It's not safe for you out here.
Yep.
So um, and and obviously he couldn't be in every place at once to save all the people from the destruction of the city. Unfortunately, um, we finally get this moment where um, he has him in a headlock, and the heat vision's going, and he's about to kill a family. And while it was only one family, this was the breaking point for Clark.
Hmm.
And he screams, "Stop!" And Zod says, "Never."
Yep.
And before everything happened, he said, "Kal-El, either you or I or both of us will die," almost foreshadowing his own death, which we see. And in a very controversial moment,
Hmm.
I'm going to say Clark because he's not Superman yet. Clark snaps Zod's neck.
I remember the
Whew.
silence
Yeah,
in the theater, like the gasps,
right.
like the like, and again, and you brought up a good point. General Zod lets it be known. He says, "There's only one way that this ends, Cal. Either you die or I do." Zod made it very clear this was a fight to the death,
Right,
plain and simple.
right.
And it was a very controversial take for people because a lot of people are like, "Oh, Superman doesn't kill," and I'm like, "Well, it depends on what comics you're reading and what movies you're watching, because we can
Right.
go about this all day, and I'm not going to do that because I could talk an hour
Yeah, we
about
can.
how many
Yeah.
times Superman has killed in comics and in the Christopher Reeve films as well. So
Yeah.
we're going to bypass it. We're going to forget about that. But just talking about the context of this film, like for me, it was shocking because I was like, because it was almost like it was pretty violent, man. Like he snaps his neck, you know what I mean? And General Zod kind of sealed his fate when he said never. And that was everything that Clark needed to hear at that moment, that no matter
He's not
what,
going to stop.
General Zod is never going to stop. He mentions it. He tells Clark right before the fight starts, he goes, I had one purpose. I was bred for one purpose, and that was for to maintain the good of my people. And he goes, but I have no people. That is what you have taken from me. And that, like, he has no purpose. So now his sole purpose is to kill these humans that Clark loves so much. He goes, I'm going to take them from you, Cal. I'm going to hurt them. I'm going to take everything away that you love. This is it. This is a battle to the end.
Right.
So in that very moment, Clark knew there was nothing else he could do. And I love that. I love that growth. Like, I love that decision, because I'm much more interested in a character who does something and learns from it and says, I will never do that again. I cannot do that. And think about how difficult of a choice that had to be, that he was legitimately holding the only other Kryptonian left. It
Right.
was it He is now officially the last of his kind. He made that choice and he had to. And I love that when the moment ends, he falls to his knees and he just lets out this guttural cry. Like, it shows you that it just wasn't a moment. And we've seen this in other comic book films where a hero will kill somebody and it's kind of like, okay, we beat the bad guy. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's it. But this impacted Clark in a way that will affect him for the rest of his life. So I do know it was controversial for some people, but I think that in the context of the film, it made the most sense based on the actions of General Zod, what he was planning to do, and where we were at the moment.
I am on the side of Christopher Nolan, and who didn't
Yeah,
he didn't want it. He didn't
he didn't
want it,
want it. He didn't want
and
it.
I'm on the side of Nolan, so we have an opposing view on this. We have an opposing view, and that's cool. That's cool that we have
Yeah.
an opposing view on it. I would have liked to have seen how he would have captured him, or
Mhm.
how he would have dealt with him. What do we do? Where do we lock him up? Do we find a way to send him to the fantasy? Like, there's all these different options that have happened, both in the comics and in the shows and in the movies, or animated movies over the years. Because if we kill him, then that's the end of that. Well, or so we thought
Yep.
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
would have been interesting to see, and that's just me just thinking out of the box. But
Mhm.
um, I was happy that, I mean, I like that it got people talking, though. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? It got people talking. Our theater, I remember when we went to see it. Um, you could hear a needle drop. Somebody was
Mhm.
celebrating behind us,
Yep.
and it was almost like it's about time. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
wow,
that's what it felt like. It was
you
like,
know,
again, because people's interpretations of the character. Look, Superman is my favorite character, and it's no secret to me that many people look at Superman as a very boring character. A lot of people do. A lot of people are like, how
right,
is Superman your favorite? He's boring. He's this. He's that. And the movie did a lot of things to kind of make him relatable and almost human, even though he's an alien. We forget
right.
he's an alien, but make him very human. And one thing I did love about this, because you brought up Nolan, I love that Nolan disagreed and said, but you're the director.
Right. He still let
It's
him do it.
ultimately your choice. This is your movie. I don't agree. I think we could find a way to, keep him alive. He didn't want Superman to cross that line. And Zach said, listen, the way this is being set up, I have to do this. And Nolan said, you're right. It's your movie.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
that is respect. That is a respect that I love, because you
Absolutely.
don't always have to agree. And it's another reason I will always stand by Christopher Nolan no matter what. Not because his movies are great and he's an amazing visionary and director, but because he supports other directors in their
He
films, and
does.
he understood that that was Zach's movie and that was his story to tell, and said, you know what? That's your call to make, and you're gonna make it. Then I support you. And I was like, round of applause for Christopher Nolan. I was like, bro, you're the man, dude.
Yeah, it's
Nolan's the
great.
man.
So, eventually Clark adopts the moniker Superman, which, we can only say Lois is the one that probably gave him that name. Um, he's deciding to act independently. He's
Mhm.
not. I'll help you guys if you need help, but I'm not working for you. That type deal. Um, and he takes the job as, under Clark Kent for the Daily Planet, and we end with that. With him meeting Lois, and I remember when the movie ended, and we've been in the theater for all these movies that we're talking.
Mhm.
This was the first time that we saw a Snyder movie together. Um, and I remember knowing how much you like Superman. I turned to you and I said, and I know how much respect you have for all the movies and projects,
Mhm.
for for the Richard Donner movies, for
Yes.
the you didn't get to watch the full run, but I know you watched Smallville. I know you watched
Mhm.
Lois and Clark. I know you like Superman Returns. But
Mhm.
when we finished, I just turned to you and I said, "You got your Superman movie."
Yes, and that's what it
So,
felt like, and I grew and again, to be clear, just like you mentioned, I adore the Richard Donner Superman films. I grew up on those movies. I
right,
love Christopher Reeve. He will always be Superman. You know, the same way I will always view Henry Cavill as Superman. I will always view Brandon Routh as Superman. And there's obviously there's in Tom Welling, and I
Yeah,
remember when this movie was over that I felt like I finally got the Superman movie that I had been waiting for as an adult.
right.
Because obviously, growing up on Christopher Reeve, You Will Believe a Man Can Fly
Yeah,
changed the world for me. That's what got me in the comic books was that movie. And I remember watching Brandon Routh in Superman Returns, and I've mentioned this before. Brandon Routh was excellent. I thought it was great. I think that the studio was a little worried of where to go, so they just made it a sequel to the Christopher Reeve Donner films,
right,
and I think that it just felt a little outdated. And even I felt it. I was like, it it didn't hit the mark for me, even though there's great aspects about the movie. And in Man of Steel, when it was done, I felt like that was the Superman movie that I had been waiting for in my young adult life. It touched on the subject matter that I wanted to touch on. Again, the idea of how would the world react if a Superman existed, and I thought that the movie does a pretty decent job in getting there. And we explore more obviously in the movie following this, but in Man of Steel it was very interesting to start see them laying the groundwork for that and how far they were willing to go and Superman making mistakes. I love that. I didn't want, again, many people have often complained that Superman is too perfect, so we find him boring. So Zack Snyder says, all right, well, I'm going to give you a Superman who basically doesn't exist yet. He just gets the suit and like in his first day has to fight off General Zod. Like that is an like almost unbeatable task. And he's got to stop the world engine. You've got chaos, you've got buildings falling, and everyone's like, how could he do this? And I'm like,
right,
guys, it's like it's this is a dumb analogy, but like it's like working at a job on your first day and you're alone and you get hit with rush hour.
right.
Mistakes are gonna happen. You're like, I don't even know where everything is in this building, but I'm trying to make sure everyone gets everything they need. So I agree. I think that when the movie was over, I felt that this was the Superman movie I had been waiting for a long time. And the final line of the movie, Lois Lane, she looks at Clark and she goes, welcome to the planet.
Yeah,
And he goes, good to be here, Lois. And they
it's
just smile. And the score hits from Hans Zimmer. And I got to give major love to Hans Zimmer because this score for Man of Steel is incredible.
yeah,
The same way that John Williams is attached to Christopher Reeve, I will never not be able to hear this score and not think of Zack Snyder, Henry Cavill, Lois, Amy Adams, Lawrence Fishburne,
if
Man of Steel.
if
Like
if
I'll always
if
think of
you
that
ever
movie.
see him, it's just 2 notes on the piano to start the whole thing off.
Yep,
Dun,
it's
dun.
amazing.
But it's
It's
iconic now, you know?
it's not fair how good it is.
Yeah. As of this recording, we're in March 2023, so it's almost been 10 years, but it's
Mhm.
still just as, um, memorable in our mind, the first time that we heard it. So we know that Nolan chose Zack Snyder to direct this. Um, there was a different ideas going around, little tidbits here that about where this would fit. Would it be a full reboot? Would this be set in the Dark Knight universe? Like they were deciding because Superman Returns, you touched on it. It was the new Superman 3, so to speak. They were going to erase Superman 3 and 4 and say this is the new Superman 3, a retcon, so to speak, a legacy sequel, whatever you want to call it. Um, this idea would go on to happen several times with other movies and such. But they tried it. So when they were deciding what they were going to do with this, it was like, okay, well, we're not going to continue that storyline that Singer took on from Richard Donner, but we're going to do something new. And then they were deciding, well, we're deciding, are we going to do this within our universe here? The MCU had just kicked off, so they didn't know what they were going to do. They've been wanting a Batman and Superman team up movie for the longest time. You had mentioned to me off the air, we had that little poster of the I Am Legend,
Yes,
World's Finest. Yeah,
for those of you who don't know, in the first 30 minutes of the movie, when Will Smith's character is driving through the city, look around. There is a giant poster of Batman and Superman, World's Finest, and it's the Brandon Routh Superman logo with a Bale's Batman logo. Go
yeah,
spot it. You'll find it.
yeah. It's great. And there were rumors that that would have been Brandon Routh, and Christian Bale, because apparently it was in Christian Bale's contract. We never got a confirmation of this or not, but
Yeah.
that it was in his contract that 3 movies and one of them was a team-up movie. We now know he did 3 movies as the Dark Knight trilogy, but, you know, um, we actually got a Batman and Superman movie eventually, but we'll get to that. We're not gonna go there today.
Mhm.
Um, what a stacked cast. Henry Cavill as Clark Kent, Kal-El Superman, Amy Adams as Lois Lane, Michael Shannon as Zod, Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent, Diane Lane as Martha Kent. We have Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White, Anjay Trejo as Feora. She had auditioned for Wonder Woman originally, and
Ooh.
Zach went in a different direction there, but he said, "You know what? I like you as this role, so we're going to keep you on as this role." I can't pronounce her name properly. I apologize. Ayelet Zuror as Laura Lorvan. And we have Russell Crowe as Jor-El, Christopher Maloney as Colonel Nathan Hardy, and Harry Lennox as General Swanwick. Just so many recognizable faces and new faces as well. Stacked cast. They did an amazing job. Out of the cast, who was your standout in your opinion? If you could,
Man. Ooh.
top 2 people, you know?
Top 2 people. Oh man, it's so hard.
Yeah. I mean,
Obviously, I thought Russell Crowe as Jor-El was
yeah, he was
incredible
pretty awesome.
casting. Incredible casting. But Diane Lane as Martha Kent hits me
So gentle,
in
yeah.
in this emotional part of my soul. It was just like she was so good. It's really hard, man, because honestly, like I thought Michael Shannon did an amazing job as General Zod. I thought Amy Adams and Lois Lane was great. But probably Diane Lane
Yeah.
as Martha was incredible, and Jor-El, Russell Crowe. It's for whatever reason, I don't know. I think everyone did a fantastic job, but those two, like whenever Russell Crowe was on screen as Jor-El, like I felt it, like I felt that hope and that lineage. I don't know. I thought he was perfect casting.
Good stuff. Well, I'm a sap, so I love the Kents.
Yeah,
And for me, Martha Kent, obviously, Jonathan Kent, Kevin Costner. We're going to get to him in a second here with some lines here, but I thought they both did a great job. I liked Amy Adams. A scene stealer were probably Feora Anche. You know, she was a scene stealer. You know, every time,
this the scenes where she's beating the crap out of Clark in the Battle of Smallville,
yeah,
where she's just like she's a step ahead of him every time and she's killing it in those scenes, like performance wise. Like there's an intensity in her eyes
yeah,
during these fight sequences and an arrogance, because she's like, hey, like son of El, you are weak. And she's pretty much saying like you're weak and you're naive and new, and she's like experience always wins, and she's giving it to him, man. And then the stuff with oh god, what's his name, the general,
Oh, Maloney.
Maloney, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
The scenes that she has with him, it's almost like they developed their own personal rivalry, right?
Right.
Like you had the main event, which was Clark and Zod, and then you had the mid card, which
Yeah.
was Feora and the General. And I thought that was really cool. She's beautiful. Her action sequences are amazing. Her fights are amazing. Her delivery was on point. She's one I've always wanted to see again. I've always wanted Feora to return.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. So, just some standout lines for us here. We already mentioned one, you know, young Clark, the world's too big, mom. Martha, then make it small. I'm gonna have you read Jonathan Kent for the next part. So
Okay.
you're the answer, son, and
Yeah.
I'll
And
read Clark.
and this is a good one because I also had this one saved in my notes. So
Yeah.
starting off with Jonathan Kent, he says, "You're the answer, son. You're the answer to are we alone in the universe?
Can I just keep pretending I'm your son?
You are my son. And I have to believe that you were sent here for a reason. And even if it takes the rest of your life, you owe it to yourself to find out what that reason is."
So good. So
It's
good.
it That whole sequence, man, that whole, like he's showing Clark for the first time and filling him in on an insane backstory to be like, hey, like you were sent here from somewhere else. you have another father, you know, and like Clark is just it's almost too much. The responsibility that he's here, and that's why he's like, can I just go back to pretending to being just your son?
Right.
And like it's such an interesting line because he goes, can I just pretend to still be your son? Because he's like, oh, like we're pretending, like like I'm not your real son. I understand this is an act. And Jonathan's like, no, you are my son.
Right.
Like you are. Like it doesn't matter if I found you. Like you are my son. But deep down, there's another reason you were sent here. And it's God, that scene's so good, man.
Yeah. Um, Jonathan, just same sequence. You just have to decide what kind of man you want to be when you grow up, Clark. Let me read that again. You just have to decide what kind of man you want to grow up to be, Clark. Because whoever that man is, good character or bad, he's going to change the world. They put it in the trailer. Standout line for me. Absolutely.
It's again, and it's and again, it leans into this that Jonathan always believed that Clark was going to change the world. He always believed that. So even though he had this fear that the world wasn't ready, he knew at some point, regardless of his actions today, at some point, Clark was going to change the world. He just needed to make sure it wasn't yet. Because he was like, the world's not ready yet. The world's not ready yet. One day, for good or bad, you're going to change the world. But right
Right.
now, we just can't do it right now.
We have another line that was in the trailer. If you could read that for us, Ricardo. It's from
Ooh,
Jor-El.
Jor-El, baby.
Yeah.
All right. So from Jor-El, Russell Crowe, you will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. They will race behind you. They will stumble. And they will fall. But in time, they will join you in the sun, Cal. In time, you will help them accomplish wonders.
So good.
I'm telling you, man, the people who wrote this, like, it's an unbelievable thing because he essentially has two fathers, and they're both giving him this very uplifting message. They're like, "Yo, you're gonna change the world. You're gonna do great things," and I love the idea that Jor-El understands that you're gonna give the people an ideal to strive towards. They're gonna race behind you, man. They're gonna be behind you, but they're going to stumble and they will fall because humanity is not perfect.
Absolutely.
They're going to stumble, they're going to fall, right? He says, but in time, they will join you. So he's letting him know you're going to have trials and tribulations. You're going to have people push back against you for being different. You're going to have people fear you. You're going to have this. They're going to race behind you. They're going to stumble. They're going to fall. They're going to make mistakes. But in time, they will join you in the sun. They will be by your side. And it's such a beautiful, uplifting message. Again,
Yeah.
all over the trailers, just selling me on Jor-El with Russell Crowe. I was like, come on, man. You got Maximus from Gladiator as Superman's dad. You mean you got me, man. You don't need to do anything else. So yeah,
Absolutely.
unbelievable stuff.
So just a couple closing thoughts here. I just thought about some things that maybe I would have done maybe little differently if they had
Okay.
more time. Um, I would have wanted more Lara Lorvan,
Ooh,
his mom.
yeah.
I would have wanted more of the mom. She was just so kind and gentle in that role. So maybe, I don't know, some type of sequence where we get a glimpse of her. I don't know, something like that in the AI, or he has a dream sequence with her. I don't know, something like that would have been pretty cool. Um, I would have liked if we had the scene of the Kents finding the ship. That's a classic scene, man. And I know that they're not trying to rehash things when they were doing this, but that would have been so cool to see. I would have wanted more young Clark because I'm a big
Okay.
Smallville fan, and I just like seeing that growth, you know. So maybe more young or more teenage Clark. That would have been. I essentially I just wanted more of Martha Kent, you
Yes,
know.
yes. We
Martha
want
Kent
that.
being,
We want that life.
yeah,
Yeah.
we want to see him with his mom. You know, we saw him with his dad a lot, but I wanted to see more with his mom. Um, I am a big fan of the Lana Lang character.
Hmm.
So it would have been a nice wink if we could have gotten maybe more Lana. We only got to see her on the bus, so maybe as an older Lana. For those of you that watched Smallville or read the comic books, Lana Lang was Clark's first love,
Yeah, she
and
was.
it would have been cool if we eventually saw her one day, either in this movie or one of the other movies. Just, you know, and then Lois gets a little jealous because we see Lana. You know, I always thought that would have been pretty cool, and we spent a decent amount, and then I put down the next snapping part, which we did talk about for a little bit. So, um, any closing thoughts from you, or thoughts that,
Man,
from this movie, Ricardo?
all right. I'm gonna try to get it all in as fast as I
Yeah,
possibly
yeah, go
can.
for it.
First and foremost, I gotta give major props to Zack Snyder and the people who worked on the script for allowing us to see Krypton in a way that we never saw before.
Right.
I'm a huge sci-fi guy, and seeing a side of Krypton that we haven't seen before was really cool. So cool, in fact, that they kind of made a prequel comic to the movie, so you can see more of Krypton and whatnot. And I love the idea that you have Jor-El, who is against the council, who's like, hey man, you guys have depleted all our resources and you're destroying Krypton. Like, this isn't the way to be. And you have General Zod coming in trying to push his weight around, and Russell and Jor-El is just like, listen man, like, you're not doing the right thing here. You're not doing the right thing here. But I do love that the entire, like, I think it's like the first 20 to 22 minutes of the film is all on Krypton.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful, because majority of the time we just kind of have Superman as like, oh, the Krypton exploded and here we are. And it's like, no, we're gonna give a little bit of rhyme and reason to why it's happening, why it's so important for Clark to get out. I love the idea that he's the first natural born birth in God knows how long, because the whole idea is that, like, the way they operate on Krypton is, like you said, the children are artificially created, and they don't have a choice in the matter. They're all born into selective roles. That's why General Zod says, I was born to be a warrior, Cal. Like, they're bred into positions. They don't have choice. And then you have Jor-El and Laura, who have a child, who say, no, our son is going to have a choice. He's going to have the ability to choose who he is and what he wants to do with his life. And again, that goes to the theme of the movie. The whole movie is based on choice, the choices that we make and the consequences of our actions. And I love that the entire codex is put into Clark, or I should say Kal-El at this point.
Right.
And he's sent off Earth. And I'm gonna be real with you, man. Again, I've seen this movie probably over 10 times, and every time I see it, especially now as a parent, that opening act just kills me.
Yeah.
Because Laura, the actress who's playing Laura, is killing it. Jor-El is very much like, no, this is what we have to do. He's being very like, we have to do this, Laura. And Laura just says, like, we'll never see him walk, we'll never hear him say our names. And I was just gone. I was just emotional. And Zach made that. He made it emotional. And again, a lot of times you get like a few seconds, like, he's in a pod, all right, bye. But we got to be with Laura. We've got to experience her loss and her pain in that situation. She loses Jor-El and she loses Cal, and it's heartbreaking. So major props for them allowing us to see Krypton in a way that we haven't seen in film before. I'm glad that they took the time to do so. And again, Zach gave us a banger opener. That's what he does.
Right.
You know what I mean? I love the Battle of Smallville. I love the first time we see the Heat Vision was in that fight, right? Like, they're both holding him down and the Heat Vision comes out, and it's like, oh, so like there's a lot of cool aspects of the film that I really enjoyed. Just the symbolism. I remember on the poster and in the trailers, you see Superman in handcuffs, and everybody was like, "What? That doesn't make any sense." And I remember people online being like, "Superman can't be held by handcuffs. How does this work?" And you watch the movie and you're like, "Oh no, he gave himself up, and if it makes him feel better about it, he's fine with it." So like, there's so much in the movie, you know what I mean? And like, look, again, more character work. And I'm sorry, I'm rambling now. I'm getting it all out.
It's okay.
But one of my favorite things about Perry White was that Perry White could have just been the guy at the office, right? Like, Lois, get the story, this and that, or whatever. But they gave him such a powerful, emotional, heroic moment where at the end, when the whole place is being terraformed and the city's falling apart, Jenny Olsen is trapped under rubble.
That's not her last name.
It's not Olsen?
No.
What's the last name in the movie? Hold on.
It's just Jenny. That's a fan theory that her name's Jenny Olsen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going back. I'm going way back.
Yeah, that's a fan theory. I just wanted to put that out there.
I remember people getting mad, like, why is Jenny Olsen now? And I was like, I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah, her name's just Jenny. We don't know her last name is.
So Jenny's in the rubble.
That's funny.
And I remember it's like this super emotional scene, because at that moment, if Perry wanted to, he could leave. Steve could leave. They could run for their lives. And she's screaming and she's crying, and Perry just holds her hand. He doesn't say a word. He just holds her hand and he gives her this look. And the look, he doesn't have to say anything. And he's like, I'm not leaving you. No matter what, I'm not leaving you. And it's such an impactful moment. And luckily, Superman, Kal-El, Clark, breaks the machine and it all just stops. But it's such a powerful moment, and it's something that I appreciate about Man of Steel is that Zack Snyder found time to give these moments to everyone. It wasn't just built around Clark having these really powerful moments. Clark has it. The General has it. Swanwick has it. Perry has it. Um, Jonathan Kent, like everybody has these really powerful moments to kind of show you that there are heroes in all of us. It
Yeah.
wasn't just Superman saving the day. I loved the idea that Superman was working with the United States military to make sure that this all comes together. I like that they were planning together and whatnot. And again, it was another thing. You said it. The general sacrificed himself to take out Feora and to jumpstart the Phantom Zone. And that was a really cool moment. A good death is his own reward. And I thought that was really cool. So again, another aspect of the film that I really enjoy is that Zach allowed other characters to share in those pivotal, important moments. It might be, and again, I grew up on the Christopher Reeve films. This might be my favorite live action Superman film.
Right.
I love the theme of choice. I love the idea of dissecting superheroes. I like the idea of superheroes making mistakes. I like watching them learn and grow. I like all that aspect of it all. And casting was great, writing was great, the humor was great. There's not much that I would personally change about the movie. I'm just grateful we got the movie that we did. And I was glad Nolan was there to
Yeah.
make sure that everyone stayed out of Zach's way, man. Just
There was a lot of
mm,
really cool nods too, because when they made the decision that it wasn't going to be part of the Nolan Dark Knight universe, they still had to give us little Easter eggs. So,
mhm.
we got to see Wayne Enterprises. That was like on a satellite. We
Yes.
saw that. One of the military people, her name was Ferris. That's a Green Lantern reference there, Carol
Yes,
Ferris.
it was.
Um, we saw something. Uh, Blaze Comics. That was not to Booster Gold, So it was just like
Mhm.
we got little Easter eggs here and there, and there was a theory about General Swanwick that eventually came true in the later movies, so that was really cool.
It
um,
was it was interesting because in that interrogation scene, and everyone just kind of thought, like, I remember thinking General Swanwick was BA for this because, as Superman gets up and he just kind of,
yeah,
let's put our cards on the table, General, and he breaks the handcuffs and he walks towards the glass, and everybody backs up except Swanwick.
right,
He's the only person that doesn't budge. Now, I don't think that from this moment Zach was like, "Hey, he's going to be this, Martian Manhunter." Spoiler alert.
right.
He's like, I don't think that was the plan back then, but I think
Probably
it's
not.
one of those. I think it's one of those really, really cool fan theories that just happened to work out.
Right,
Zach saw the opportunity, goes, you know what, go. So now we can add context to that scene if we want to, and say, well, you know what, the reason he didn't move is because he wasn't afraid
right.
because he's Martian Manhunter. Really cool
Exactly.
stuff.
And in a way, Jenny might have been a prototype for Jimmy because he didn't want to have Jimmy Olsen in the movie, so he put Jenny as the younger person in the office, to the point that you thought her name was Jenny Olsen. So that's pretty
I'll
funny.
never forget that. I
Yeah,
remember the internet going crazy,
yeah. They said she was. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
everybody was like, "Why did they change Jimmy to Jenny Olsen?" And
uh,
I was like, "Really? That's what we're arguing about?"
yeah.
And I
It
never
was.
looked into it. I just never looked into it. I was like, "Okay,
Yeah,
I guess."
it was never really confirmed. If let me see here.
No, I bet you if you go to IMDb, it just says Jenny. I
Yeah, I mean,
bet
in
you
in
just
the
says Jenny.
comics, there's a Jenny Olsen, and she's the gender bent version of Jimmy. So
Mhm.
maybe that was what the nod was. But
Could be, could be.
yeah, it was never really confirmed if she was Jenny Olsen or not. So, but that's funny though. But you know what? I call her that too. Just
Jenny
I just
Olsen, man. I was like, Jenny
yeah.
Olsen, baby.
Yeah, I want the listeners and viewers to know that we don't think that that's really her name. You did, but no,
I
that's not.
legitimately thought it
No,
was her.
yeah.
I
If
was
you
like, "Oh
look at
yeah,
the
that's Jenny
IMDb,
Olsen."
she's known as Jenny, not Jenny Olsen. So
That's amazing. So
yeah.
everyone got mad for no reason. Go
Yeah. Yeah,
figure.
but then I just looked that up. It's a comic book reference. The gender bent version of Jimmy in a different universe is Jenny Olsen.
Jenny
So
Olsen.
so that's how, and see, that's what Zach would go on to do. He makes these comic book references.
Mhm.
So that's what I appreciate about him. Um you don't have to like pry it out of me that I enjoyed this movie. it felt like it was Superman Begins. Let's just call
Yes.
it what it was. It felt like a
Yes.
Nolan movie through and through. For the longest time, it was my favorite DCEU movie, and it's still one of my favorites. It's great, and I'm glad we got it. I'm glad we got it as well. It
Yep.
might. I have to think. It might be my favorite Superman movie. It
I
might be
think it's
my
my favorite live Superman movie. I think it's my
yeah.
favorite.
I don't. As far as the best Superman, I don't know yet. Because I go back on a few different people. Like I love Christopher Reeve. Um, I love Tom Welling. I watched every single episode of Smallville multiple times, so I love Tom Welling. And with Henry, amazing. He's the Superman for modern day. I will say that.
Yes.
For the
Yes.
modern day Superman, um, we stack him up against a lot of the TV ones. I think, I like him. But and maybe we didn't get to see him enough to make that judgment.
Mhm.
That's going to be an ongoing theme with the characters from the DCEU. We haven't seen them enough to make a judgment of is this your favorite Superman? Some people say he's their favorite Superman anyway. It doesn't matter. They've seen
Yeah.
enough. So it's really cool. But that's it for Man of Steel from Zack Snyder.
Mm.
Next up is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. All right.
Buckle up, ladies and
Oh
gentlemen.
yeah. Oh yeah. So, folks, we did want to thank you for viewing and for tuning in and listening to us. We just wanted to encourage you to give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. And we wanted to let you know to please comment your thoughts on Man of Steel, however you felt about it, and comment on, is this your favorite Superman movie? Is Henry Cavill your favorite Superman? I know a lot of people tell me Henry Cavill is their favorite Superman, so
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
be interested to see who else agreed with that. And it's a coin flip. Like I can't decide. It's between Christopher Reeve and Henry Cavill. And if I go back and watch Smallville, I'll say Tom Welling.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
depends on where I'm at the time, but please let us know. And stay tuned because we have Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice coming up, and that's going to be one you will not want to miss. So,
Woo.
for Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.